Hi, time for My Honest Truth, episode 54. Yeah, I may appear a little disheveled, but at their best times, all authors appear a little disheveled. Um, yeah, I'm an author. Um, I'd like to mention that as of a little while ago, all five of my Banana Chan partly illustrated volumes are available for sale from a set of links on the Banana Chan section of my website. Um, yeah, they're also available from other online bookstores as well, but it's a little tough to find them as I'm not really doing much promotion. This is what Volume 1 looks like. I have intentionally left it white over there um, for some symbolic reasons and artistic reasons and some other reasons. It'll it may or may not ever become clear to you why I did that. Um, this is what Volume 2 looks like. Volume 2 is thinner than Volume 1. Volume 2 adds a very important piece to the story. Um, uh, Volume 2, her grandson from the future, Buster, shows up and he adds some twists and turns to the story. And those twists and turns continue in Volume 3, which is that thick. That's how thick Volume 3 is. And yeah, and it's a 5-volume story. Volume 4 is Volume 4 is the thickest. And that's because Volume 4 is, in my opinion, Volume 4 is the main part of the entire story. It's a part of the story that I call the Eternal Oasis, and you'll understand why that part of the story is called the Eternal Oasis when you read it. As I said, you can buy these volumes from a set of links on the Banana Chan section of my website, or you can search other online bookstores for them. You will find them, but the easiest place is to go to my website. And then we've got the final volume, Volume 5, which is that thick. That's how thick Volume 5 is. This is where the story ends. But Volume 4, the thickest, is the most important part of the story. So what I'd like to do on this episode of My Honest Truth is I'd like to go through the interview questions that I had planned for other authors and answer them for myself. So, what is the hardest part of writing for me? Well, even though, as you can tell by the thickness of this book, I have written a lot, I do currently find writing to be difficult. Hardest part of writing is Hardest part of writing is psychiatrists. Try to keep them out of your life. That is actually the most honest answer that I can give. And it means so much. But yeah, try to keep psychiatrists out of your life because they will create blockages towards writing. The entire 5 volume story that I wrote was mostly put together. This entire 5 volume story, that's how thick it is, was mostly put together before I ever saw a psychiatrist in my life. First psychiatrist I ever saw was 2011, and that was also around the time when I was finishing writing this story. And yet now it's 2021, which is 10 years later, and that's when I finally have the books ready to be sold, and that is mainly because of some creative things being postponed due to psychiatrists. For 10 years ago, I could have had the books for sale in this fashion, looking exactly as they do right now. I could have done this 10 years ago, but psychiatrists, like, I do blame psychiatrists for the fact that I'm only doing it now, and I could have done it 10 years ago. What do you do when you're stuck in your writing? A lot of patience. It's just a lot of patience. You wait until the right moment to actually put those right words and paragraphs, or whatever part of the process you're in. You wait until the right moment to complete that part of the process. Do you write outlines? Why or why not? When I wrote this story that I'm promoting, I wrote a lot of outlines, but then in the process of writing the story, the characters would make other decisions, and then I'd write a new outline based on the decision that the character made. So basically, it was a constant process of writing new outlines. I didn't know at the start of writing the story what the story would ultimately be about. But now that the story is completed and in 5 volumes, I do know what it's about, and I do know what lessons are there, and what themes are there, and I didn't know that at the start, which is when I was inspired by anime and golden age anime. I consider the golden age of anime to be the mid to late 1990s, and I was inspired by anime and video games of around that time, and that's kind of why writing this huge story, to me, it felt like playing a video game. But now it's ready for you to read it, and my part in its creation is over, and I will go on to write other things in the future. Let's see. Do you like writing character-driven stories or plot-driven stories? Now, I don't know how to respond to that because some characters have things that they want, and those things that the characters want drive what you can refer to as the plot. I mean, their wanting of those things is plot. They're what they choose to do in order to try to get those things. That is plot. And this particular story, I consider it a story of characters widening their horizons as they grow into adulthood, and there are heroes revealed in the story. I mean, there's one page in this volume, one single page in volume 4, where the main character, this girl, does something heroic, and it is because of that heroic action that she does that makes me feel like the entire 5-volume story is justified. It's because of one heroic action that she does in volume 4, in one page in volume 4, that makes me feel like the entire 5-volume story is a story that is worth telling. Villains or heroes? There are villains in the story, and there are heroes in the story. Although it's more of a slice of life story, when I'm watching shows, I always side with the hero, but it is cool when the villain has something cool about them. But I always side with the hero. Are there any characters or stories you miss writing? Tell us about them. Well, to be honest, I'm just glad that it actually happened, that I got it over with regards to writing all 5 volumes, especially this volume, volume 4. This story, The Eternal Oasis, The Eternal Oasis being the subtitle of volume 4, it was originally a storyline that that was in a dream, a profound dream that I had when I was 14 years old. Was basically the storyline that ended up being the story of volume 4 of this series. And I'm just glad that I actually ended up getting that story into a book. And I'm glad that that's over with, and that now it's time for people to discover it and read it. Do you have a favorite place to write? I have never really had an optimum place for writing. I've just kind of always been poor, and I haven't even all the time had access to a good enough computer. And for long periods of times, the software that I prefer to write on just hasn't been available to me. I consider myself a writer, but there are long spans of my life when I just have experienced calling myself a writer, but not having the tools at my disposal just because of things related to situations regarding being quite poor. And I'd like to solve that problem by having lots of people buy these books and find out what the story is about and enjoy the story. Um, have you abandoned other works in progress? Tell us about some and why you abandoned them. Let's see, other works in progress. Um, I guess I've started a lot of stories that I never finished. Um, I can always tell if it's something that I'm going to finish if it seems to have a certain type of depth from the start of the writing process. Like if it feels to me like it has a certain type of depth, then I know that this is a story that I'm actually going to finish writing. But if somewhere near the start of the writing process it just feels like really hollow and stuff, I'm probably not going to finish writing it. Um, do you like sharing your writing? Actually, yeah. Um, and the reasons are because I believe that the stories that I ended up telling in my writing, I believe that like for example, I believe that the story that is in these 5 volumes, I believe that it actually does teach lessons and build a bridge for certain types of people um, from not understanding certain types of things to being available to comprehend certain types of literature and culture and being able to appreciate a wider variety of things. Um, so, yeah, I I believe that there's value in the stories that I've ended up writing, and so I like sharing them, and I like it when I find out that other people have benefited from that value. Do you listen to music while writing? Okay, a lot of music, mainly popular music, was listened to while writing this story. I mean, there were times when I'd go on Pink Floyd phases while writing this story. There were times when I'd go on Oasis phases, Jewel phases, Jewel culture. Um, there were times when but actually a lot of popular music. Um, a lot of popular music was listened to while writing this story. Um, but um, uh, but but yeah, there's lots of types of music that I like, and lately I don't really like popular music that much, but a lot of popular music was listened to while writing that story. Where do you get inspiration from? Well, this story came from mid to late 90s anime and video games. I mean, I saw a friend play I saw a friend play the first 10 minutes of the video game Chrono, and I found that so inspirational. Like, just the music and the visuals and just what was going on was so inspirational. I found just the combination of everything that was going on in the first, like, maybe 10 to 12 minutes of the video game Chrono Cross for PlayStation, I found that to inspire me to write a story that, like, just a sequence of scenes that ended up being in Volume 2. Volume 2 actually contains the first scenes that I ever wrote for this story. Then I later went on to write stuff that took place before those scenes, which is in Volume 1, as the story is told chronologically. Yeah. So, yeah, that was maybe about 11 pages that were inspired by watching the first 10 minutes of Chrono Cross as played by... I mean, and my story is different than Chrono Cross. Like it, but it was just things in the music and in the general feel of what was going on in the game that inspired me to write my own story. How do you develop your ideas? Well, a lot of reading of other things and consuming of other parts of culture, like TV shows and movies. Although I consumed a lot of other parts of culture while writing my story, the story I ended up writing, in my opinion, is very original. So, give us a piece of advice about anything. Piece of advice, well, avoid psychiatrists. Like I said, I could have had these 5 volumes exactly as they currently are 10 years ago, but things had to be postponed because of the effect that psychiatrists ended up having on my life. Yeah, that's the piece of advice, and I'm going to end this video here. Thank you for watching this episode of My Honest Truth, and I will put the link in the bottom for where you can find the books to buy, and I hope you buy them.